Motivation is a mood, and you've been trying to build a life on a mood. And that's not an insult. It's the most common mistake running in the self improvement space, and it's running hard because the entire industry profits from it. If motivation actually worked, if the podcast, the book, the retreat, the course, the vision board produce lasting change, you'd buy it once and then you would be done. But motivation fades. It always fades. It has a half life of about 72 hours on a good day. And then you're back to the same patterns and to the same avoidance, the same gap between who you say you're becoming and how you're actually living on a Wednesday at 4 p.m. when nobody's watching and the feeling is completely gone and the couch is right there. The people who actually build the life, not the performance of a life, not the highlight reel of a life, the actual thing. They are not more motivated than you. They are not more talented, more disciplined by nature, more spiritually together. They have simply made a decision that the feeling is not the requirement, that they move whether the feeling shows up or not, that the identity that they are building is constructed one small, unglamorous, unremarkable act of follow through at a time. Not in the inspired moments, but in the ordinary ones, especially in the ordinary ones. And this is that episode. No bullshit, no highlight reel, just the truth about what actually builds a life and why your brain, especially if it's wired to run hot, to sprint and crash, to go all in and burn out, has been working against you in ways that you didn't fully understand until now. Welcome back to the Listen Bitch podcast. This is the rebellion season. Season 10. I'm in season 10, and I would say this is episode 7 of the new age of Brandon Lynette and the Brandon Show, otherwise known as Listen Bitch, okay? Yeah, 7 episodes in so far, and this is the one that I've been building towards since episode 1, because everything we've talked about this season already, every truth that, I'm helping you guys name, every wound that, we're going through together, that you're identifying, every pattern that is being called out, requires the episode to actually mean anything. Because insight without action is, well, I guess entertainment. And I'm not here to entertain you. I'm here to help you build something fucking real. And we've talked about truth as daily practice, about your body, about money, about relationships, about spiritual warfare, about legacy and parenting. All of it points here to the daily, private, unsexy practice of doing what you said you'd do, whether you feel like it or not, for long enough that it stops being a decision and just starts being who you are. So this is the episode for the people who start strong and fade. For my all or nothing thinkers, for the ones who have been waiting to feel ready before they commit, and especially for the brains that are wired differently, that sprint when they're lit up and disappear when they're not, because the standard disciplined conversation was genuinely never built for you. And today we're going to talk about why and what to do instead. Absolutely, I'm still looking for sponsors, brands that align with health, sovereignty, truth, and integrity. Okay, real alignment, not just a check. So please reach out at brandonlynette.com. Yeah, motivation is a myth. So let's kind of talk about what's actually true. And we can dismantle this cleanly because the motivation industry has been lying to you. Shocker. It seems like all the systems and all these corporations and all these toxic positivity bullshit gurus, everyone's full of shit, okay? And they've been lying to you and it's been costing you for years. Motivation is a neurological state, not a character trait. It is produced by dopamine, specifically by the anticipation of reward, and it is inherently unstable. It spikes when something is new, exciting, and full of possibility, and then it drops when the novelty wears off, when the work gets hard, when the gap between where you are and where you want to be feels too wide to cross in a single burst of enthusiasm. This is not weakness. This is biology. And trying to build a sustainable life on the back of a neurochemical spike is like trying to build a house during an earthquake and wondering why it keeps falling down. The people you admire who seem consistently disciplined are not riding a permanent motivational high. They have simply, through repetition, through failure, through the slow, unglamorous work of showing up anyway, built systems and identities that do not require the feeling to produce the action. They have made the decision so many times in so many ordinary moments that it no longer registers as a decision. It registers as just what they do. And that is what consistency actually produces. The automation of aligned behavior. The automation is built through repetition, not inspiration. And this is a little reframe that kind of changed everything for me. Discipline is not about forcing yourself to do hard things. It is about becoming someone for whom the right thing is no longer hard. Because you've done it enough times that it's just normal. Every time you act in alignment with who you're becoming, even when you don't feel like it, you are laying down a neural pathway in your brain. And neural pathways are deepened through repetition. The behavior gets easier, not because the task gets easier, but because the brain gets better at it. It gets more efficient, less resistant, more automatic. That is neuroplasticity working for you instead of against you. And it is available to every fucking brain in every wiring configuration. Yes, bitch, including yours. Yours. And we have this all or nothing thinking, and that's the trap that keeps burning us down. And it's taking out more people with real potential than almost anything else. And it runs especially high in brains that are wired for that intensity. All or nothing thinking sounds like this. If I can't do it perfectly, there's no point in doing it at all. If I missed a day, the streak is broken and I might as well start over Monday. If I can't commit to the full program, the full routine, the full overhaul, I'm not ready to start. If I ate the thing that I wasn't supposed to eat, the whole day is screwed up. It's a write-off. If I drop the ball on the goal, clearly I'm not someone who follows through, so what's the point? And that voice is not high standards. It is a failure trap disguised as high standards, because all or nothing thinking guarantees that the smallest imperfection becomes permission to quit, which means you never develop the thing that actually builds the life, which is the ability to miss a day and show back up anyway, to make a bad decision and course correct without a full reset, to be imperfect in your execution and keep moving anyway, because the direction matters more than perfection, and progress is not linear, and it never has been. The all or nothing brain loves a clean start. Monday, January 1st. After the vacation, when the kids go back to school, when the project is done, when life calms down, but life does not calm down. It just changes shape. And the clean start that feels like the right condition for beginning is actually just another form of waiting that has been keeping you from building anything durable. Because durable things are not built in clean conditions. They are built in the mess. In the interruption, the imperfect day, the missed workout, the hard season, by people who have decided that imperfect forward motion beats perfect stillness every single time. And the fix is not more willpower. It is lowering the floor. When you miss a day, the rule is not to restart the whole system. It is to do the smallest possible version of the thing. Not the full workout. The 10-minute walk. Not the perfect journal entry, 2 sentences. Not the ideal meal, like one real food choice. You are not maintaining the habit of full capacity. You are maintaining the identity, the signal to your brain that you are still someone who does this thing. And that identity, protected even in the smallest way and the hardest days, is the thing that compound interest builds on. And there's a gap between who you say you are versus how you actually live. And this requires honesty, real honesty, not the kind that you perform in your bullshit accountability groups where you guys gaslight each other and blow smoke up each other's ass. I'm talking about the private kind. There's a version of yourself that you carry in your head, the one that you're becoming, the one you describe when someone asks you about your goals, the one that lives in the vision you've cast and the values that you've named. And then there is the version of yourself that shows up in the actual data of your life. Your calendar, your bank account, your body, your conversations, the way you spend your first hour in the morning and your last hour at night. The gap between those two versions is the most honest measurement available of where you actually are. Most people, if they looked at it directly, would find the gap is significantly wider than they have been comfortably admitting. And this isn't about shame. You're not a victim. Don't feel sorry for yourself right now. This is just about accuracy, because you cannot close a gap that you're not going to look at. And you cannot look at it if you're too invested in the story you've been telling yourself about how it's basically fine. You've been doing the work. Basically is a gap word. It lives in the space between intention and execution. It is where potential goes to quietly die. The gap exists for a lot of reasons. For most people, it's a combination of everything we've talked about in season 10. The wounds, the patterns, the fear, the shame, the relationships, the spiritual resistance. But at some point, the reasons stop being explanation and start being excuse. And only you know which side of that line you're on right now. Not your coach, not your therapist, not your accountability partner. You, in the quiet, when the story stops and actual life is right there in front of you. And the question is not whether you have a gap. Everyone has a gap. The question is whether you are closing it slowly, imperfectly, consistently, one small aligned action at a time, or whether you're managing the story about the gap while the gap stays exactly the same size. And I said it earlier, the standard discipline conversation was not built for you if your brain is like mine. And I want to make sure that's said clearly, because I need you to hear it before you spend one more minute feeling broken for not being able to execute a system designed for a neurological profile that you just don't have. The conventional wisdom or discipline assumes a brain that produces consistent dopamine, maintains attention across tasks with, relatively low novelty, can execute routine behaviors without significant activation energy, and regulates transmission smoothly. If your brain does not work that way, if you hyper focus on what interests you and cannot access the same energy for what doesn't, if novelty is oxygen and repetition makes you feel suffocated, if you sprint when you're lit up and you crash when the spark is gone, if starting is agony and stopping is equally hard, if time feels like now and not now rather than a linear sequence you can plan inside, even the standard system will fail you. Every single time, not because you lack discipline, but because you are trying to run software on hardware it was never written for. And what actually works for my brain and probably yours, first, interest and urgency are not character flaws. They are neurological operating conditions. You do not need to fix them. You need to build systems that use them. If you need novelty, rotate the context. Change the location, change the format, change the tool, keep the target the same, and vary everything around it. If you need urgency, create it. Real deadlines, real accountability, real stakes, not fake ones. Your brain can smell a fake deadline from a mile away and it will not mobilize for it. You'll paralyze yourself. Second, body doubling is real. Working alongside another person, even in silence, even virtually, activates the social accountability circuits in a way that working alone does not. If you cannot make yourself sit down and do the thing alone, put yourself in proximity to someone who's also working. The presence is often enough to shift the neurological state. And then the third thing is to transition. Okay, transition is the enemy, not the task. And the hardest part for most of us with neurodivergent brains is not the doing, you guys, it is the starting. Which means the system you need is not about making the task easier. It's about making the start smaller. You do not sit down to write the chapter. You sit down to open the document. I literally went to the gym today, planning to just drive to the gym. Like, bitch, let's just drive to the gym. You do not commit to the full workout. You commit to maybe putting on the shoes. That was it. I drove to the gym. I walked in and then I'm like, okay, let's just put on the shoes. And then the start ritual, when it's kept small and non-negotiable, does more for your consistency than any full-scale system ever will. I had the greatest workout today because I was just going to drive to the gym. And fourth, you are not failing at discipline. You have been applying a neurotypical discipline framework to a non-neurotypical brain and wondering why it doesn't fit. Stop measuring yourself against a standard that was never built for you and start building a standard that actually accounts for how your brain works. Because your brain, when it's used correctly, is not a liability. The hyper focus is a fucking superpower in the right context. The intensity is a gift when it is aimed. The creativity and the pattern recognition and the ability to make connections that other people miss, those are not consolation prizes for the attention problems. They are the thing. That's the fucking thing. It's your magic. And that shit deserves a system that actually works for your brain. You know the people who start strong and fade. You know who the fuck you are. You go in hard. Like that's your move. When you commit to something, you commit fully. New business, new health plan, new relationship with God, new financial strategy, new morning routine. You research it, you set it up, you announce it, and you go. And for a window, a week, 2 weeks, maybe a month if the conditions are right, it actually works. You feel it, you see it, you're doing the damn thing. And then something happens. Not a catastrophe, just life, a hard week, a disruption to the routine, a bad day that bleeds into a bad week. And the novelty wears off. The initial results plateau. The excitement that was fueling the engine runs out, and you discover that underneath the excitement, there was not yet a system. Just momentum borrowed from enthusiasm. And without the enthusiasm, the momentum stops. And then the all or nothing voice shows up and tells you that you blew it again. And the familiar weight of being someone who doesn't follow through obviously is going to settle back in. What I want you to understand about this pattern, the problem is not the fading. The fading is predictable. It's neurologically guaranteed. The problem is that you built the whole structure on the spike instead of building through the spike forward towards something that doesn't require it. The sprint is not the problem. Mistaking the sprint for sustainable strategy is the problem. The sprint is useful. Use it. When you are lit up, when the motivation is high, when the energy is available, build the infrastructure. Build the systems, build the habits, the environments, the accountability, the identity anchors that will hold the thing in place when the spike is gone. Use that inspired moment to build the structure that makes inspiration unnecessary. Because the goal is not to stay permanently inspired. The goal is to build something that can run without it. And when the fade comes, because it will come, your job is not to reignite the original excitement. Your job is to do the smallest possible version of the fucking thing. To hold the thread. To stay in contact with the identity even when the feeling is completely absent. Because the fade is not the end of the story. It is the part where the real building happens. Anyone can show up when it's exciting. The rebellion is showing up when it isn't. And waiting to feel ready. This is the commitment that a lot of people keep making. There's a version of this conversation that has been happening in your head for a while. And maybe it's been a long while. The version where you almost commit, where you get close to the edge of the real decision, the one that requires something from you, the one that changes something, the one that can't be undone, and then you pull back. Not dramatically, quietly, and you reframe the timing. You decide you need a little more preparation. You acknowledge the goal and reschedule the start again. Ready is not a feeling that arrives before the commitment. Ready is a feeling that develops because of the commitment, because of the reps, because of the follow through accumulated over time into a body of evidence that you can trust yourself. You do not feel ready and then commit. You commit, and then slowly through the doing, you become someone who is. And the waiting is comfortable because it keeps the possibility alive without requiring anything. As long as you haven't fully committed, you haven't fully failed. So the dream stays intact. The potential stays theoretical and therefore perfect. And theoretical potential is a very comfortable place to live until you look up and realize how long you've been there and what it has cost you in actual time, in actual life, actual impact that didn't happen because you were still getting ready. The commitment is the step, not the planning of the step, not the announcement of the step, the irreversible, real, something is different now decision that you're doing this. Not when the conditions are right, not when the fear is smaller, not when you feel more ready, but now in the conditions you actually have, with the resources you actually have as the person you actually are today, not the future version of you you're waiting to become before you begin. You became that future version by beginning. There is no other path. And consistency does not look perfect. I want to be clear about that. It does not mean you never miss a day. It means you miss a day and you come right back. It does not mean you never have a bad week. It means you have a bad week and don't let it become a bad month. It does not mean you execute flawlessly under every condition. It means your standard, your floor, the minimum you will do even on the hardest day is high enough and small enough that you can always reach it. Always. Even depleted, even overwhelmed, even when the motivation is completely absent and the resistance is at its absolute highest. That floor is what you build on, not the ceiling. The ceiling is aspirational. Hit it when you can, knock it out, celebrate it when you do, but the floor is the thing. The non-negotiable minimum that you protect like it matters, because it does. Because every day you hit it, even in the smallest way, you start sending the message to your brain. I am someone who does this. And that message accumulated over weeks and months and years becomes an identity so solid that doubt doesn't find purchase anymore. Not because the doubt stopped showing up, but because you've outbuilt it. And this is how the dream life gets built. Not in inspired moments, but in the Tuesday afternoons, in the days that don't feel significant, in the small choices nobody sees and nobody applauds and nobody knows about except you and God. The private follow through, the quiet integrity, the unsexy daily practice of being someone who does what they say. That is the rebellion. That is the thing that compounds into a life worth living and a legacy worth leaving. So where do you actually start? I mean, first thing, you guys have to actually identify your floor. Not your goal, not your ideal, but your floor, okay? That's the minimum version of your most important daily practice that you can do on your worst day. And I'm talking when you have no energy, no motivation, and no ideal conditions. Everything's just a mess. I want you to write that down, make it so small it almost feels embarrassing. That is your non-negotiable. Protect it above everything else, because the floor is what keeps the identity intact when everything else falls apart. Second, you find your start ritual. The single small action that reliably transitions you into work. Not the work itself, the gateway to it. You know, the shoes, the document open, the first sentence, the timer set. Find the thing that reliably signals to your brain that it's time. And do that thing every single time before anything else. The ritual creates the state. The state produces the work. You are not relying on motivation. You are engineering the conditions that make the right action the path of the least resistance. And then the third thing I'm going to say is you have to close the gap by 1 inch today. Look at the distance between who you are, who you say you are, and how you actually live this week. Pick the single biggest gap. Not all of them, just one, and do one concrete thing today that moves you 1 inch closer to alignment. Not a plan, not a decision, an action. Something that takes less than 10 minutes and produces a real result. 1 inch today, because the gap closes 1 inch at a time, and the first inch is the hardest. And today's the only day that is actually available to you. The life gets built in the ordinary days. Start treating them like they matter, because they do. They are the only thing that matters. And 7 episodes, you guys. Me with a little pat on the back here. This is the one that kind of ties the whole season together already, because every truth we've named means nothing without the daily practice of living it. Insight is not the transformation. Action is. So if this episode cracks something open, if you recognize the all or nothing trap, if you felt the gap get named, if something finally clicked about why the standard discipline conversation has never worked for the way your brain runs, do not let that land without doing something with it today. 1 inch. Like the show, share the show, subscribe, leave a written review, 2 minutes, real impact. It's how the next person who needs this conversation finds it. And there is someone out there right now who's been starting and fading their whole life, and they need to hear that they're not broken. They just need a different system. Head to brandonlynette.com and get into everything happening this season. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. I appreciate you so much. You can watch a full video of all of the shows I do. Okay. The life you want is not on the other side of a better motivation strategy. It is on the other side of 1,000 ordinary, unsexy days where you showed up anyway. So start today, start small, start now. Rebellion season is just getting started.